Good afternoon, everyone. We will resume now with questions to staff. The way I would like to approach this is we will have questions, first of all, exclusively to the Auditor General's office, and then upon completion of those, they are welcome to stay or leave at their own choice. And then we'll go to questions to all our other staff, followed by discussion, debate of the current amending motion and then the main motion. So I have on my list, Councillor Brockton, your questions were to Auditor General as well? Mostly to staff. Okay. Okay. If you can stick with those, and then we'll go back on the list if we've got other questions. So please go ahead.
So just to the Auditor General, I was expecting more comment from you both this morning. You basically said you've done your analysis, but my report is not yet ready. Can you comment on the recommendations before us? Do you think this is the best recommendation under the circumstances for us? Is there anything that you can flag for this committee before we make a decision? I'm just looking for additional comment.
Thank you, Councillor. Through the chair to Councillor Brockington, our role in this project came from a direction given to us back in July 2014. In the audit of the source separated organics program, we found fault in the lead up to the program. We found fault in the volumes that were incorporated into the program, and that audit stands for itself. And we recommended that staff look at the termination costs around that contract and determine whether or not, number one, the project should continue with the supplier, and included in that, staff was to take a closer look at a city-owned and city-operated facility as well, because that particular scenario was not examined in any detail in the lead up to what was eventually the request for proposals that led to the contract that exists today. And the question that arose then was, if there were such significant problems in the development of the data that eventually led to the contract, how could council trust staff to do that analysis? And the direction that was given was that we would look at staff's analysis to determine that it was accurate and that their assumptions were reasonable in the circumstances. Now, in 4 years later, after that recommendation, there's been significant litigation. I think that's been well discussed and addressed. And the city has a better handle on what quantity of organics are available in the program. That was largely unknown 4 years ago because it was there wasn't a significant track record. And since then, staff, as you know, have negotiated a new arrangement, or a new possible arrangement with OrgaWorld after a couple of changes in the ownership of the company. The Office of the Auditor General was not involved in any of those activities, but we were dutifully waiting for this analysis to be completed. And as you know, this analysis was completed on the 5th of March. And that was the version that we looked at. And we are doing our follow-up on that audit at exactly the same time. So given the restrictions that that exist, the restrictions that will still exist in the contract and the modified contract, given the changes that have been made to the collection programs that the city has for solid waste and leaf and yard waste, even given the reduced put or pay, when staff laid out the various alternatives and costed the various alternatives, our role, as requested by council, was to examine their work. And we spent quite a bit of time in that short time period working with staff. We haven't had time to prepare a report. We debriefed management last Friday, and normally we don't prepare a report until after our debriefing is complete, so that was complete on Friday. There's a fairly aggressive schedule in place to, I assume, meet the terms that have been discussed between the city and Orgerworld, and we were asked if we would brief your committee today, and I guess council later, we agreed to provide that briefing because our work in regard to the direction from council is complete. And in our report, we will talk about the details that we found in that review. We have some recommendations going forward for future business plans, business proposals, how they're laid out, for example, in presentation to committee and council. We have some recommendations that you'll see in our report when it's issued that relate to some of the work that staff would do in future in relation to this project. But none of our work identified any changes to the supported recommendation. All of our analysis came back to, first of all, our analysis indicated that the work that was done by staff was accurate, and that the recommendation that they are making to committee, as it's laid out to you, is accurately supported, and the modifications that we suggest wouldn't change the recommendation.
That's very helpful, thank you. Just my last question to you, sir, is were there any recommendations or guidance or direction you provided to the general manager that's not covered off in the report today that we're receiving?
The recommendations that were provided to the general manager in the debriefing are about improvements that can be done, can be incorporated into the process in future analysis of business plans. And none of our recommendations would affect the recommendation that is being made by staff to this committee today.
Thank you for that. And Mr. Chair, I have a significant number of questions for the public works staff, so if I could be added to that list, it would be appreciated.
Certainly. Councillor Cloutier, you had questions for the auditor, did you, or no? The auditor. Yeah, okay, thank you.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Merci, Monsieur le Vérificateur Général. Just to follow up a little bit on Councillor Brockington's question. So you weren't able to finish your work today to present the full results today. Is that correct? You weren't able to, I'm sorry, you finished your work, you weren't able to complete your report.
Monsieur le Président, the councillor is correct. All of our work is complete. We have given the committee our finding that the recommendation by staff is supported by the analysis that they did, and a review of that analysis has found it to be accurate.
Okay.
Our work is only complete when we submit a report to Audit Committee and then eventually Council. At this point in time, we have not finished our report, and our report will be included with the follow-up report that we are doing on the 2014 audit on the sole source separated organics procurement.
Merci. Et quand est-ce qu'on va avoir ce rapport-là? Quand?
J'espère, I hope that our report will come forward at a scheduled meeting that we have in early June.
Early June, okay. Again, following up on Councillor Brockington, I think he asked you if based on your findings, that this was the best contract, maybe contract's not the right word, the best option for the city. Was that a yes or a no, or from your perspective?
Mr. Chair, the Office of the Auditor General is very detailed about the problems that it identified with the original contract and the original layout of the program as it rolled out. And city management has been able to reduce the putter pay, and that certainly contributes to, that certainly reduces some of the excess costs that we identified in our audit in 2014. But nevertheless, we are still left with a putter pay that represents more than the sole source separated organics that we are currently generating. So given the restrictions of the contract, or even the modified contract, the way we are currently collecting the green bin program and leaf and yard waste, and all of those programs are operating to meet the terms of the contract that was signed earlier with Orgerworld. And given all of those restrictions, including the reduction and the other alternatives that staff examined, and they laid those alternatives out, our city-owned facility, a new contractor continuing with the existing program, the analysis supported going with the modified contract with Orgerworld. And the work that was done by staff was accurate, and we were asked to perform that function, and we did. But that certainly doesn't change our opinion of the origins of this program. But there are certain elements that the city is living with and will continue to live with, although there's been a modification of the putter pay.
Are you referring to, Mr. Auditor General, the leaf and yard waste issue, in that currently leaf and yard wastes are being, because we've collected 533,000 tons, divide that by 7, that's 74,000 tons per year, which is just below the new level of the putter pay, but that includes leaf and yard waste. Are you referring to the fact that we could, or we had an alternative to process leaf and yard waste at a lower cost? Is that what you're referring to at a, I think one of the delegations said $20 per ton or $15 per ton? Or am I off track in? Is that your reference?
Mr. Chair, the councillor is in the ballpark, but the point that we made in the original audit was that the way the program was rolled out, it was rolled out to allow, or to whether it was allowing or permitting or demanding commingling of sole source separated organics and leaf and yard waste, a larger green bin, for example, than is needed for the amount of organics that are generated by the average household, allows or permits or encourages, whichever term you want to use, individuals to add leaf and yard waste to their green bin. And with a put or pay that used to be 80,000 tons, the program, including the solid waste pickups, the leaf and yard waste pickups, and the green bin pickups, were changed to maximize at that time, with those restrictions, maximize the city's position given the restrictions of an 80,000 ton put or pay. And going forward, it's incumbent on staff, as the sole source separated organics quantity grow, as they are predicting or hoping, through the addition of dog waste and plastics in the program. As that quantity increases and approaches the new lower put or pay, I am certain, and we will certainly be recommending so, that staff be aware of and look towards opportunities to reduce that commingling, to maximize the return to the city under a revised contract with Orgoworld, if that's what the committee approves. Because there is no doubt that that sending a ton of leaf and yard waste to Trail Road for processing is less expensive than sending it commingled with sole source separated organics. There are, however, current restrictions in the way that collection happens that introduce additional costs that help with this business case.
As we ask staff in a couple of moments questions on this contract, and they'll be commenting maybe on tonnage per year of source separated and leaf and yard. Are you in a position, before issuing your report, because you said the work's not done till the report's finalized, will you be in a position to evaluate or estimate or comment on those estimates provided by staff?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we will be in a position to talk about those estimates provided by staff.
Okay, just one more question, Chair. I think you said that the staff didn't provide a robust challenge to the work done by the external consultants. Did you said something like that, or am I? It was,
Chair,
it was a couple of hours ago.
Mr. Chair, yeah, it was, and it was before lunch.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, when management is still responsible for the information that is provided to a committee and council, whether it's generated by staff or whether it's provided by external consultants. And it's imperative, and what we look to see when we go in to do our work, it's imperative that there be a robust challenge by staff and evidence of that robust challenge by staff to satisfy us, the Office of the Auditor General, so that we can provide that assurance to committee or council. And as you'll see in that report, the evidence of that robust challenge wasn't there. We know that it's clear that staff worked with external consultants, but issues, and it's those recommendations that will come out of this that you'll see in this report when we come forward that really relate to future work done by staff in situations such as this.
And that goes, I guess, to business cases and making sure we have a good, robust business case that you can comment on. So that recommendation will be in your report as to what staff should do going forward to better serve the residents of the city?
That's correct, Mr. Chair.
Correct. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Yeah, after lunch, suddenly blanks. Councillor Taylor, followed by Councillor McKenney. Or, no? Okay, Leaper. Not that I'm aware of. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much, General. Appreciate your diligence coming here this morning and trying to walk us through this. You know, I'm going to try and paraphrase back in some Cole's notes here, and you tell me if I'm correct or incorrect, but I think there's no debate that while this, will be colorful here, while the original contract might have been conceived in original sin, the staff had direction to go and try and make it holy, and they've been trying to work to do so. That was the direction that council gave them. Your audit essentially said their homework wasn't done back in the day. Now their homework with regard to this report is done. We've asked you to check their homework, and you're telling us that the homework is accurate, that the work they've done with respect to this report is correct, that the facts of this report are correct. Is that accurate?
Mr. Chair, with all due respect to the terminology that was used, I think that would be a good non-auditor's version of what I said.
Well, that's good because I'm not an auditor. Okay, so
You're the only one who is, so the rest of us welcome non-auditor language. So thank you.
yeah, I mean, Ken, I know it's not your place to tell us if this is a good or bad decision, but it's your place. I think we've asked you to tell us if the facts of the decision that we're going to make are correct. And from what I've heard, you've told us they are. The facts that you're being presented by staff are correct. So make your decision based on the report that's in front of you, with the understanding that the material that staff have put in is accurate, and that they've followed processes to make sure that the material that's in there is not subjective but objective, based on, you know, things like the history that we have now with the waste collection stream and the knowledge of how much waste we're going to collect. I do just want to touch on something you just touched on tangentially, though, and I think this is probably more of a question to staff, but you opened the door to, and we heard some presenters talk about the commingling of the leaf and yard waste into the organic stream. And if it was an apples-to-apples comparison and you were just comparing where it's going and the tipping fee for each, it's cheaper at Trail Road than it is in the organic stream. But you alluded to, you know, the current way that leaf and yard waste would be collected. You know, if you take the all-in cost of looking at how we would have to pick up that leaf and yard waste, then it starts to become a fuzzier picture. Then it becomes the cost differential. It's not such a great deal anymore to take it to Trail Road. Is that what you were referring to when you were talking about, you know, anomalies in the collection process?
Mr. Chair, I'll try and not auditor's terminology, but I think if this program were starting from the beginning, and there is no doubt staff did a very good job before the program started in the pilots, identifying the quantities of organics that would be coming out of the various households across the city. Very robust audits and pilot programs were done. The data was well analyzed, and staff had a good handle on what would be delivered from the City of Ottawa before they delivered the program. As they made the transition from here's the data, to let's put a program in place, the quantities changed drastically. They went up quite high, and we were never able to find any reason why the quantities went to 60,000 tons, 70,000 tons, and then 80,000 tons. And given the eventual signing of a contract at 80,000 tons, where you're going to pay whether you process anything or not, then you eventually decide, and it makes sense rather than paying something for nothing, is you to design a program that will deliver organics of any kind, including leaf and yard waste, to Orgerworld to use up that put or pay. But if the program, and this is an if the program were to be designed from the beginning with for example, the good data that existed way back when, we may very well have, and that is, this is hypothetical, we may very well have, we may very well be collecting our solid waste differently, with different configured vehicles, with a different leaf and yard waste program operating differently. But 4 years in with this contract, or a number of years down the road, 4 years since the audit, there are restrictions that exist based on decisions that were made because of conditions that existed then. And untangling each of those little decisions today has a cost associated with it. So if you could wave a wand, leaf and yard waste would all go to a city-operated facility because it's cheaper. And the organics would go to Orgerworld. But at the end of the day, whether the existing contract or the modified contract, there's still a put or pay, and you would still have to untangle the decisions that were made with the collection of the various waste streams. And there's a cost associated with that. Staff has done an analysis, and to change that would mean that that it wouldn't affect the outcome. It wouldn't of the recommendations you're making today.
Right.
But going forward,
sure.
Going forward with the certainty that they have now, and this with a lower put or pay and potential growth in organics, staff can conduct analysis to look at as they fill up that put or pay with true organics, they could start to look at and cost out changes to minimize the amount of leaf, to reduce the amount of leaf and yard waste that is going to Orgerworld, but is still hitting that lower put or pay threshold.
Sure. Okay. Well, thank you very much, General. Appreciate that.
Councillor Leeper?
Yeah. Thank you. I think you put your finger on it when you said the hope here is that the change in the contract will result in more organics, and I guess that what you mean by that is by the inclusion or by the allowance of plastic bags, that will increase diversion rates?
Well, I think, Mr. Chair, I think that's the understanding of the entire,
yeah.
The modified proposal from Orgerworld that was negotiated with management, and the modified program that would roll out over the next year.
Yep, and I think you're right. The underpinning of this is that by allowing people to use plastic bags in the green bin, that will boost the amount of organics, boost the diversion rates, a greater number of people participating. That will give our staff the ability to have some flexibility around what to do with leaf and yard waste. Have you looked at the Dillon Consulting study that is used as the underpinning of that assumption around growth?
Mr. Chair, we looked at, through you to the councillor, we looked at all the material that was provided by Dillon, and we had some questions with that were fed back to staff. And based on that, we have some recommendations going forward for the next time staff engages in a process where they bring in outside consultants to do work. Okay. For example, we had some concerns about the level of growth that was identified in the business case. Staff reran the analysis with a lower level of growth, and to their credit, even with a lower level of growth, it still supported the same recommendation. So, well, we would have gone forward with a lower level of growth. It would not have changed the support for the recommendation that staff is coming forward with.
Because one of the 2014 criticisms of the approach that we took was projections that were quote unquote too optimistic, and I think you said that a couple of times in the original audit. I'm very concerned that we're going to find ourselves in the same boat 4 years from now, 3 years from now, that the projections for the increase in the number of people using the green bin as a result of the permissibility of plastics is not going to be what we think it is. How big a risk are we taking? How confident can we be that there is going to be enough additional diversion as a result of a contract that permits plastic in the green bin?
Mr. Chair, we do not pretend to be experts in waste or organics. We've been to a number of the facilities that operate like Orworld. We've been to Orworld's other facility. We've seen what happens when you bring dog waste and plastic.
Composting, there is people's behavior, residents' behavior, and you know, I think understanding behavior shifts is something that we all can understand if we are confident in the methodologies that are being used, for example, through market research. I'm guessing that you have had a chance to look at those methodologies, and consider that they're valid.
Just as in that specific case, when we had them rerun the numbers for us, what we did is we actually brought it back. I think it was to go from, let's say, a 38% based on no plastic to a 42%. So only like a 4% increase, and that with those numbers, that was still sufficient to make the business case work, to support the option that we're moving ahead with. So it didn't take a great, to us, it didn't seem to take a very large leap to make that, to make the numbers still work.
Okay. Let's hope if this decision or this new contract is audited a few years from now, that we won't again be shown to have been too optimistic with our projections. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. And Councillor Kadri, you had a question.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, for accommodating me ahead of a couple of the speakers. I do appreciate that. Just a question to Mr. Hughes. Mr. Hughes, do you have any concerns today in terms of the contract being sole sourced versus previously in the old contract? Because I know that was partly one of your concerns at when you did the report on it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our concerns about the original contract remain. This is an amendment to that contract, and that's probably it's my understanding that the city solicitor sees this as an appropriate tool to amend a contract where both sides wish to make some changes. The contract already exists. We expressed our concern on the original contract. This is an amendment to that contract. The fact remains that this is the contractor the city has dealt with since the inception of the program.
So, and again, I'm not putting words in your mouth. Are you okay in terms of the same condition being applied as a sole source contract to the previous one? Is that satisfactory with the AG?
From our point of view, by definition, it doesn't meet the term sole source contract. It's an amendment to an existing contract. But our concerns that we had with the original contract still remain. But you have the two parties of the contract that wish to amend it to make it better, perhaps to make it clear. Well, definitely to make it clearer going forward and perhaps less palatable. That's allowable when two parties. You can verify this with city solicitor, but it's allowable when two parties agree to open up a contract and make changes. We had concerns with the original contract, but that was fait accompli some years ago, and you live with the decisions that were made, and if you can amend it, as is the case here, and everyone agrees, then you go forward with those amendments.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I'm not aware of others wanting to ask questions of the Auditor General. Speak now or forever hold your peace. All right. Thank you very much then for coming before us. You are, of course, welcome to stay with us for the rest of the meeting, but also free to leave if you choose to do so. It won't be held against you. We will move now to questions on all other aspects of the report that's before us. I'm going to take my chair's prerogative and lead off here with a few questions which I hope will maybe lessen the number that we need to ask around compostable bags, around standards, around why we're going with one bag versus the other. I'm going to characterize what I think to be the renegotiated contract and the new conditions in front of us and ask for your comments then, please. My understanding is that the new contract or renegotiated contract in front of us allows our residents to use plastic bags or, in fact, any kind of bag, including the paper and lined ones that we previously said were the only allowable ones, and now opens it up so that they can use other forms of bags within the system. We, as a city, are not recommending going straight to compostable only bags for reasons of a lack of a provincial standard at the moment, some other perhaps confusion in the commercial marketplace. But should we at any time in the future choose to impose a specific type or standard of compostable bag, the city would be able to do that without having to renegotiate the contract. We're essentially saying it might be plastics for the next couple of months or the next couple of years, but if we wanted to go that route, that would be a relatively easy step. Is that accurate characterization?
Chair, yes, that's correct. In fact, we are continuing to strongly encourage residents to use paper as they are now. However, if residents want to go out and buy compostable bags and that will motivate them to participate in the program, they're free to do that. And if they're motivated to participate in the program to use plastic bags or some of the other types of bags that we showed up on the slide, they're certainly free to do that. The overall goal here is to drive participation in this program, and that's the way we've developed it.
But there are enough unknowns still about provincial rules, standards, etc., that prevented you, if you will, from making the leap to compostable bags only right at this time.
Correct, Chair, but I think the other part of that is we wanted to make this as an accessible program as possible to remove all barriers to participation so that we get as many people participating in the green bin as possible. Mm-hmm.
And as that standard becomes available, and we hope we heard about the economies of scale, potentially the prices come down perhaps significantly in that area, we might find ourselves moving in that direction.
Correct. I think, Chair, in fact, staff would be more than happy if the province enacted legislation that allowed those single-serve plastic bags to be, or mandated them to be compostable. Then you've got the best of both worlds.
And a little different, but a similar sort of characterization of the coffee pods or any other perhaps food but food type container along the lines of what we hear has been done with our local coffee pod.
Correct, and I think Mr. McKillop and Mr. Pigott said it best when they outlined there's provincial framework around producer responsibility for the blue and black box. There's no such framework around the green bin, and that's unfortunate because that really does leave it up to producers and municipalities, as is the case in Toronto. Toronto's going through it right now to figure out what is that producer responsibility. And as we said in the report and in the presentation, and certainly guided by the motion that's very helpful that has been put forth, we're willing and we will be working with industry in this regard.
Thank you. And I noted to myself, because I heard different language, with plastics, particularly the bags again, allowing versus encouraging. Really what the city is doing is allowing the use of plastic bags. We're not saying to everyone, we all hope you will now use plastic bags. In fact, you showed us that image there, which is quite clear. In a sense, it's a hierarchy as well, starting with paper-based, fully compostable materials. That's still going to be the preference that we will put the message out to residents.
Correct, Chair.
Yeah, thank you. Finally, from me at the moment, beneficial use of the standard or the quality of the compost that comes out at the end was raised. Are we seeing a degradation in quality now? And the beneficial use material was brought up. Can you perhaps remind us or help clarify, is it a drop in quality, how much, and what can be done with the new product as opposed to what could be done today with the product from Orga World?
I'll let Ms. Journeau get into the details, but I think it's important to clarify one thing. Orga World has struggled with making AA compost since the start of this contract. They have made some, but the large part of what they've been making has been going to agricultural use as a soil amendment, in other words, NASM quality. And it's being diverted from the landfill, which is the goal of the program. And in my mind, that should be the goal of the program, not to make pristine compost, which would be fantastic in a perfect world, but they are diverting it, and I think that's the overarching goal of this program, is to get those organics out of the landfill and get them into beneficial use. But I'll let Ms. Journeau elaborate on how the product's being used.
So the enhanced contract will allow Orga World formally to use their organic material in a variety of different ways. A lot of that material will be land applied to farmers' fields as a nutrient. They will also be allowed to do other beneficial agricultural products with that compost. So we're just formalizing it in the new amended agreement. The Ministry of the Environment and Climate Change regulates all these products, so it still will be in compliance with all regulations.
Thank you very much. That's it for me, at least for now. Councillor Brockington next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can we be reminded, just to get us all in the right thinking here, what is the participation rate for the City of Ottawa in the green bin program?
It's approximately 50%.
And with, yeah?
Yeah, sorry, in apartment buildings though, so while a quarter of apartment buildings within the city have access to a green bin program, there's actually very little uptake in those buildings.
So 50%, and what is the anticipated participation rate once plastic bags are permitted?
So currently we're diverting approximately 40% of the household organics or organics from the waste stream. With this enhanced program, we're hoping to achieve 63% by 2023.
contract, the revised contract permits up to 75,000 tons per year. What happens when we exceed that?
The 75,000 tons is actually the put or pay amount, so we can exceed that amount. However, what I'll do, and the auditor alluded to this, is as the tonnages go up, we'll divert the peak leaf and yard waste to Trail Road.
Okay. And could finance staff clarify to us what the net actual cost is to taxpayers? We hear about the 15-cent per month cost, but given that the threshold, that the annual tonnage threshold is being changed from 80 to 75,000, there seems to be a significant savings there. So is the net result for the City of Ottawa, including our taxpayers, positive?
So the net is an increase of 600,000 per year. That's basically paying for that enhanced service, and that also includes the reduction of the put or pay from 80,000 to 75,000.
So these savings, though, in the annual tonnage, the report indicates, what, a $2.7 million savings? Am I reading that correctly?
So the 2.7 million is an estimation of what we would continue to be sending in terms of peak leaf and yard waste, separately collected peak and leaf, to reach that 80,000. Now that we're bringing it down to 75,000, we're almost eliminating that. And so that's an estimation of peak leaf and yard waste that would have gone to Orga World just to meet the 80,000 put or pay.
I don't understand. I don't understand. We're paying for 80,000 now, even though we're not using 80,000.
Correct.
So there's pressure to reduce the annual tonnage to make it more realistic to what people of Ottawa are actually putting in their green bins, and you've come up with an annual tonnage of 75,000. And Orga World is agreeing to this. So forget the 15 cents for the revised prices to add plastics. Is that reduction, though, not a savings to the City of Ottawa?
So yes, reduction from 80. So if we ignore the enhanced service, in 2018 we're going to save 360,000, which equates to 500,000 in a year, just moving from 80 to 75.
And over those multiple years, that's how you get 2.7 million.
It's unused capacity, which essentially it is that difference between the 80,000 and the 75,000.
I'm just trying to have a better understanding how the addition of plastics is more expensive than reducing our annual tonnage. I thought the reduction of the annual tonnage was a far greater number than the slight increase to now add and process plastic bags in the green bins.
So the increase to process plastic bag goes from $110 to $124. So it's not a slight increase, but is much smaller than the current contract. Because in the current contract, we'd be paying $151 for the enhanced service. So there is an increase in the price, but the reduction in put or pay helps to manage that overall increase.
So if we go from 40% participation rate for household waste to 63% by 2023, can Orga World handle that volume increase?
Chair, as we go along this contract, as Marilyn had mentioned, we'll start to hive off more leaf and yard waste to Trail, more kitchen waste to Orga World. The collection contracts are going to be retendered in 2020, and there has been some discussion here today about why would you send any leaf and yard waste to Orga World? It's expensive. The problem with that is the collection cost to separately collect leaf and yard waste throughout the year far exceeds any savings you would get by taking it to Trail Road. However, if the provincial legislation goes forward and there's full producer responsibility for blue and black box, and if council decides at that time, and we'll have to come forward with a report, that they would prefer the stewards to fully take over the collection of those materials, there would be a good opportunity to change up that collection contract so that we can take more and more leaf and yard waste in either a co-collection situation or a different truck to Trail Road.
Does the City of Ottawa have the legal authority to force multi-unit dwellings to offer green bin services to their tenants?
Chair, I'll get legal to chime in here, but I believe we would have the authority to make it a mandatory program as a condition of garbage pickup through the bylaw, sorry.
Yes, essentially that's correct.
So why have we not done that?
Chair, I think this step that we're taking here today really reduces the barrier to participation in multi-unit buildings. I think the old program, the way it was set up, creates a barrier for participation in multi-unit buildings. So I would expect once we get this program in and we start going to multi-unit buildings and getting bins in multi-unit buildings, encouraging their participation, in fact, trying to be very positive, using education to get them there, see where we land, and we will be coming back with a strategy, an Ottawa waste strategy, probably in the early next term of council, and we may be suggesting some of those measures in that strategy.
I would really prefer not to wait until in 2019 when the green bin program is expanded to permit, if this committee and council approves this, the collection of waste with plastic, to wait X number of months or years to see how it goes, to then try and convince landlords to be a part of this. I think the time here is now. If we have to sell, you say, look, your residents have really no way to leave their units, to collect their organics, to come down into the basement, to dump it into a pot. That's solved now because they can use either a compostable or a non-compostable bag to do so. I'm really frustrated the number of multi-unit buildings in my ward that don't offer this service, and they're part of the overall solution to. So anyway, I'm deviating from asking questions, but I really think this committee needs to move on that matter. And what's also missing is an actual detailed public education or campaign that when this program does get expanded, it's kind of like Ready to Rail, where every month they have a dedicated focus on getting the people of Ottawa ready to this transition. That, if we don't hit that 63%, then this is a total failure, because 40% is not acceptable, and we have to have a succinct plan to encourage everyone. And I think about all the campaign materials that exist from the city. I rarely see, I'm not saying they don't exist, because I do see them on the sides of the garbage trucks, public campaigns to get people more engaged and involved. The last question for now is, I just want you to take this committee through the process of an actual plastic bag filled with organics. I put it in my green bin, it gets collected. Talk to us about the process, particularly how that plastic gets pulled out of the system. Because you and I have talked about this when you came to my office, but I would like the public to have a better understanding how that whole process where the plastics can get pulled out of the system.
So all the waste coming into World is shredded. That's everything currently is shredded, and it will continue to be shredded. It's then put into tunnels where there's spigots in the floor that blow air through the waste. And then at the end of the process, it is screened, and there's basically 2 trommel screens that take out all the inorganic material and includes the plastics. So those materials are currently being sent to landfill for disposal. So if people are putting in materials that don't belong to the program, it gets screened out, and it will continue to be screened out in the future process.
Thank you very much. Next, we've got Councillor Cloutier and then McKenna after.
Thank you, Chair. Couple of questions, just building on Councillor Brockington's. Mr. Wiley, you had said that, or someone said that only some of our compost is AA quality. Do you have a percentage of what is AA quality and why?
That is a part of the dispute with World is their inability to produce AA compost. To my knowledge, they have produced virtually no AA compost as required in the contract. So this is a negotiated outcome, so we're allowing them different beneficial use products as an alternative to the AA, but they are also going to give us 2,000 tons per year of AA compost out of this process.
Is that because of their technology or because the waste, the incoming feedstock is contaminated?
The AA has nothing to do with the feedstock. It has to do with the length of time it stays in the plant. And so the AA compost is a stable product, and it takes a much longer curing period to achieve that stability.
It's their procedure. They don't leave it in the plant to cure or ferment or whatever.
Cure.
Cure. Okay. Do other municipalities allow plastics in their green bin programs in Ontario? Do any?
Just about every municipality in Ontario allows plastics, but a lot of them only allow biodegradable plastics. So Toronto and York region allow plastic.
And they have a methodology, they have a supplier that, like Orga World, will by some way shred it out or eliminate it?
Some of Toronto and York's material goes to the Orga World facility in London.
And do they use the same technology as Orga World Ottawa?
That is correct.
Okay. How much of the plastic is removed in Toronto, in London? How much of that plastic is removed? Is it 99%? Is it 90%?
It's hard to compare the two programs because in Toronto and York, they also allow hygiene products and diapers. And that is a significant portion of the material that is removed along with the plastic bags. So I believe the diapers form over 15% of their residual waste stream.
To be removed so that it could be beneficial use compost?
No, those products are sent to landfill for disposal. Well, I'm not aware of the type of products they're producing in London. I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with their plants' outputs.
Why are we only talking about dog waste? Is it in fact animal waste, no matter what the animal is?
So our existing green bin program already includes kitty litter,
Yes.
which includes animal waste, as well as animal bedding, which would also have animal waste in it. So this is just a supplementation to the existing program by allowing in dog waste.
Okay. From an I'm just going through operations. From a weekly, how much, when we changed to bi-weekly garbage pickup in 2012, how much did that increase our diversion rate?
It went from 42% to just over 50% on the curbside.
And are we compliant with provincial regulations at that level?
At the time, the target from the province was 60% diversion. So at this point on the curbside, we're only at approximately 50%. So no, we are not achieving the province's targets at this point.
And the provincial's targets is in flux. There is more coming. There are changes coming that we have to be ready to adapt to.
Yes, you're correct. The province is proposing banning all organic waste from landfill in 2022, and they've also established a target of 70% diversion of organics by 2023 from single-family homes and 50% diversion of organics from multi-residential families by 2025.
One of the speakers spoke about 38,000 tons per year of separated source organics. I presume the balance is leaf and yard waste. Is that based on the 74,000 approximately that we are currently sending to Orga World? Is that correct?
That's approximately correct, yes.
Okay. What happens to yard waste when it goes to trail road?
So we have a facility just adjacent to the landfill site where it's composted in open windrows.
Composted in?
Open windrows. So just literally triangular piles of dirt, and we just use a front-end loader to roll it.
does that become AA material or beneficial use material?
We are currently selling it as a potting soil product to avoid labeling required under the government.
Okay. And the processing cost of that is less than the $124 per ton that we anticipate to pay under this contract?
Yes, the net cost after the sale of the compost, the leaf and yard waste compost, is approximately $15 per ton.
Okay. Have we spoken with the farmers community about this change, the association that might represent farmers and what's best for their fields and their industry? Have we consulted?
So NASM is a well-used product here in Ontario. So certainly the organics framework from the Ministry of the Environment actually encourages products like NASM to be used on agricultural lands. So we know that the local farmers like this product and they're used to using it, and they've had no issues with it.
Talk to me about the change, and you're informing me that most of it is beneficial use, and I was under the assumption that it was AA and that we were reducing the quality. Is there a price difference to sell it? Is there a market? What is the difference in the price to sell?
So the contract with OrgaWorld actually requires them to market the material, and they receive all the benefits of that market. So to tell you the truth, I'm not really that fully aware of what the value of those different market materials are.
So that is, we pay them and they process and they get to sell the product at whatever.
You're correct.
Is there a market difference in the, is there a robust market for the beneficial use material? Will somebody end up having to sit on this for, is there a market for it?
Definitely. So currently the city puts biosolids, approximately 45,000 tons per year of biosolids as a NASM product on agricultural land, and there is a waiting list for that product. So farmers are very used to receiving this type of material and actually love it.
So we'll be able to, whatever we produce, whatever is produced can be used?
Yes.
Okay. Over to the educational component, Councillor Brockington's touched on it. Our participation goal is 63%. Will you be able to take us through briefly how we got to that? And how does that, that 63, from 40% to 63%, how does that compare with participation in other municipalities?
So right now, City of Ottawa at 50% for curbside. We're in the middle of the province. There are some municipalities who do much better, and they have incentivized programs that drive that participation. We will be coming back in the next term of council with a strategy on how to move forward.
What are those incentives?
So in other municipalities, they've used programs like Clear Bag, bag limits, Tag a Bag, or containerized programs where you pay based on the size of the container.
So it's not, the gentleman, Mr. Edmund, used coercion, it's sanctions.
It's a financial incentive to participate.
Okay. How much do we spend on the educational component? How much do we spend promoting reduce, reuse, recycle compared to other municipalities on a per capita basis? Do we invest in educating our residents about the benefits of their civic duty?
Our current budget is $280,000. However, we're leveraging the savings that we'll achieve in 2018 as a ramp-up period of about $360,000, and then we're going to be putting forth another $330,000 next year to get the program going. That's in addition to the 280, which would be about $610,000. I can't speak to what other municipalities are doing, but maybe I could get our colleagues in corporate communications to elaborate a little bit.
Mr. Chair, so we will be conducting market research in the coming months to identify the specific audiences and create a baseline to accurately measure and provide data to adjust a communications plan as required. And this is consistent with the recommendations included in the 2011 Auditor General's report. And part of our market research will include reviewing the communications plans of other municipalities and stakeholders and sharing those lessons learned. And this market research will look at the city's diversion program as a whole with a focus on the green bin, so we won't just be looking at the green bin specifically. And the communications plan, a robust communications plan, will be developed with two primary objectives. The first being the positive education and promotion, so informing residents of what goes where, and then secondly, showing the public how easy it is to use. And this communications plan will be shared in the coming months once we have that research, that baseline research completed, and will be part of the complete implementation plan that will be shared with Council either at the end of 2018 or at the beginning of 2019 when the full implementation plan is shared.
I have just, sorry. Okay, legal, legal is okay. Legal, does this agreement resolve the ongoing issues?
Yes, Mr. Chair. If approved through committee and through council, this will put an end to any outstanding disputes, whether they be the original leaf and yard waste or the more recent capacity dispute.
Does this give us any reassurance that Orga World would or would not start accepting waste from other municipalities that would be commingled with ours, but now I'm learning more about the beneficial use versus the AA use. We won't have trucks rolling through the city from other municipalities because they have a capacity to accept it, and it would be profitable for them to do so?
Mr. Chair, under the contract as it exists today, Orga World would require the city's approval before accepting residential organics from another municipality, either in Ontario or Quebec, which they might be authorized to under their certificate of approval. There was no change proposed to that. So under the revised contract, Ottawa would maintain that veto, for want of a better term.
Under this, and it's a veto? You were saying they?
Yes.
Has Orga World made any suggestions that they are wanting to expand their plant to accept more waste from one source or another?
Chair, not to our knowledge, no.
Okay. And can they expand it without our approval?
Chair, they are permitted to take IC&I or commercial waste, commercial organic waste from within the city.
Okay. There you go, ICI. Councillor Brockington referred to residential waste, multi-residential, and this is my last set of questions. ICI is also a big part, institutional, commercial, industrial. Fully on board with getting our multi-residential units. What can we do as part of our corporate comms approach, or our approach with the industry? What can we do to increase participation of the ICIs and is that part of the plan? Restaurants?
Mr. Chair, yes, so the provincial organics framework actually specifically addresses IC&I waste, and they also have targets that they have to achieve, which is 50% diversion of organics. So they will also have to be part of the solution on diverting organic waste.
And does that stuff go to Orga World?
Currently, I believe there's a very minor amount of IC&I waste from some grocery stores going there, but certainly, I think the industry will expand with, you know, all these institutions and establishments getting on board. It doesn't necessarily have to go to Orgerworld, though.
But where does it go?
Well, there's also Moose Creek has a composting plant. There's a plant outside of Kingston, and I'm sure as there's more waste coming in, or organic waste coming into the waste stream, that there will be new people building plants to accommodate that material. It could go to Orgerworld too. I mean, it's just, there will be lots of options, I'm sure, in the future.
Thank you. Councillor McKinney.
Thank you, Chair. So am I to understand then that really the only reason this report, everything else being the same, doesn't specify compostable bags as opposed to regular plastic bags is cost? So it's because you don't think that those folks who today are not using the green bin, and therefore those who are today are already subsidizing those folks, and by suggesting in your report, recommending that we allow just regular plastic bags rather than compostable bags is just an added cost to the taxpayer, really, and residents who are using their green bin.
Chair, as I previously said, the purpose of the enhanced program is to use whatever method to get people to participate in the program. So if they want to use a compostable plastic bag and go and pay for that, and that motivates them to participate in the program, then we're happy. But we also wanted to knock down as many barriers to participation as we could, and that's why we included plastic bags. The other note of the compostable, even though they're fully compostable, or we're advised by the industry that they are, the retention time in Orgerworld's plant isn't sufficient to achieve that full compostability. And I think it was stated of up to 20 days or 60 days, yeah. So that wouldn't fully break down in Orgerworld's facility. But people are certainly, you know, as I said, first off, we want to encourage them to keep using paper bags and doing what they're doing. But whatever else it takes to get them in the green bin, we want to encourage that too.
And you suggested that by allowing plastic bags, that we would be diverting between 40 and 63% of organic waste by 2023 from the landfill. What exactly is that based on? I just don't see the evidence in front of me, so I don't know what those numbers are based on, and I know it's been suggested that people have used the word ick in the past, and but I don't see that as evidence to me that we are really going to be diverting 40 to 63% more organic waste by 2023 with the simple measure of allowing a plastic bag.
So we used Dillon Consulting to do the legwork for us, and they looked at municipalities across Ontario and as well as other jurisdictions in Canada. And so they found that when you introduce plastic bags, there was an immediate uptake in the program.
And where is that evidence? I'd just like to see it.
Well, so there is these background reports that Dillon Consulting prepared, so there's 5 separate memos, and certainly we'd be happy to give them to your office.
And did they look at, would we get the same diversion rate with just compostable bags? Like, was there? I look at, one of the things I'm struggling with is this. Of course, I want more waste diverted from the landfill, but I just don't see. I don't understand why today we're not looking at other measures at the same time. I mean, we hear that we're going to do, more public education campaign. Why haven't we been doing that for 2, 3, 4 years? Why now? And you know, Halifax introduced a clear bag program in 2015, and in the first year, 24% increase in the amount of garbage that had been going. So they went from 58,000 tons to the landfill in 2014-15 to 44,000. 24% decrease just with a clear bag program. Why aren't we doing this? Like, I can't support the recommendation today because it's not robust enough. There's not enough here that says to me, we are taking this seriously. We are going to do everything we can to ensure that people are, that we're diverting waste from our landfill. Clear bag program, you know, limits on the number of bags. I don't think we ever decrease the limit of the number of bags. There's nothing makes me crazier when I walk around and I see 5 black garbage bags, no blue bin, no black bin, and no green box. Because I know what's in them, right? Like and there's no penalty for that. There's nothing that we're doing to say to those folks, you know, you need to divert. It's not up to the rest of us to pay for you. And not just in our program today, but going forward when we have to open up hundreds of millions of dollars worth of landfills. And never mind the social and the environmental cost to that. We're ignoring that today. Like we haven't even turned our minds to that. So it just, for me, I don't see the evidence. I don't know, like, I don't even know how much is too much plastic. So if I put a big plastic garbage bag in my big green bin, and then every day I pick up dog waste and I throw out organic waste in, I don't know, garbage bags, Loblaws bags, or bread bags, how much plastic is too much plastic going to Orga World? Do we know that? What if half of our green bin becomes filled with plastic bags? What if a quarter? What if 3/4? Like, what is the amount? How much plastic is too much plastic?
Chair, I'll try and take a stab at the various questions that were asked. The councillor's right. We have lagged behind, and in terms of our solid waste planning, and that in part was a changing legislative framework at the province, but you know, probably not a huge. We could have moved forward. Again, as I said, I think the purpose of this program is to get this in place, get people using it, remove the barriers to participating in the green bin program, and then to come forward early next term of council with a refresh of the Ottawa Waste strategy. And to the councillor's point, there are lots of levers that we could pull. We could pull enforcement, mandatory programs, bag limits, user pay, container subscription, clear plastic bags. I don't think any of us know currently today what is the right program for Ottawa. All those programs have downsides too, in terms of illegal dumping, etc. So I think we want to do our due diligence. We want to get this program, this very positive program that removes barriers to our residents, in place, get them up, get them used to using it, and reinforce positively the use of the green bin program, and then come back in the next term of council with a well thought out plan that has actually been consulted on by our residents. In terms of the question of how much plastic is too much plastic, I can tell you, because I've been there, the London Orga World plant receives primarily waste and plastics from the Greater Toronto area, and they manage it fine. So I don't anticipate us getting to the point where we're experiencing operational issues because of the amount of plastic we're collecting in the green bin.
In the Dillon reports, did they indicate what increase in the use of single-use bags would be across the board now that folks think, well, you know what, it can go in a green bin, anything, you know, better than nothing. So rather than, if I'm going to start to use my green bin, which I'm skeptical that people will use a green bin just because of a plastic bag, but but let's say they were, you know, and there's got to be, we have to expect that there will be an increase overall in the use of single-use bags. Was that alluded to at all in the consultant's report?
The Dillon report didn't look at specifically what the increase in the uptake in bags are, and certainly we're promoting that you use bags that you already have in your home. If you're going to use plastic bags, use those bags that are already in your house as opposed to purchasing ones.
And the end product, absolutely no additional microplastics in that end product is, because I think I heard you say, if I'm not, I might be mistaken, but I thought you said there would be 10% left after after it had gone through the plant.
No, not 10%. Sorry, if there was diapers in there, that produces a significant amount of residuals. Our program does not include diaper waste at all. Those plastics are screened out at the end of the process. And so the product, the NASM products, or all of these beneficial reuse products, are regulated by the Ministry of the Environment and Climate Change. So they have to still adhere to all the regulations that are in place.
If there's a green bin and your employees or our contractors are picking up garbage and green bin, and the green bin now, rather than having a paper bag, has got a dark plastic bag tied up. You don't know what's in it. It could be garbage. How will we regulate that? How will we ensure that what is in those bags that are opaque, that they are actually organics, that there aren't diapers in them, for example?
Yeah, and that's really difficult to do, and we do, so part of the Dillon's work is they actually do acknowledge that there will be higher residuals coming out of that plant, but those are residuals that would be going to landfill anyways. So while it may be in the inappropriate bin, it is still going to go to landfill just like it was before.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Leeper.
Thank you, and I'll potentially be asking some of the same questions that Councillor McKenney did, but I'll try to add some precision to those. Will there be plastic in the final product that comes out of Orga World?
There may be small amounts of plastic that make it through the screens, but again, it's a regulated product by the Ministry of the Environment and Climate Change, and that product has to meet the standards that are established by the ministry.
So the standard allows there to be some plastic in there?
Yes, very little though. It allows, very minuscule amounts of sharp materials, but it's a very regulated product.
So the choice that I'm being asked, and I have a question for legal about the decision we're making today, although I think it's fairly clear to all of us. The choice that we're being asked today is to accept a contract that you've negotiated. And congratulations. I mean, there is much to commend, obviously, in the contract that you've negotiated. But it is a contract that you've negotiated that allows plastic into the green bin. And that's going to result in the perpetuation of the use of plastic by residents. It provides a bit of a virtue to some of the single source bags, where somebody might be tempted to stop using those bags, the tea bags from the store, and bring their own reusable bags. Now they're thinking, well, you know what, I can reuse that bag and put my compost in it, throw it out in the green bin. It perpetuates our use of a product that is, ultimately killing this planet in terms of the resources that are used in the manufacture of those, the fossil fuels that are used, as well as the way the plastics find themselves in our waterways. And the plastics at the end will find their way into our waterways. You've said that we're going to have some plastics in that waste, in the hopes of the trade-off, which is that we're going to boost participation rates in the green bin program. I haven't heard, I didn't hear an answer that was good from you in terms of whether or not the boost in diversion rates would come whether we specified that it be compostable plastic bags or compostable bags versus the others. I suspect that if we were to say, you can use compostable bags in your green bin, that we would see a boost in the number of people using them, especially if we were able to make them easy to buy, if we were to educate people about what logos to look for. So I'm really concerned about the choice we're being asked to make, one which is based on, I don't think, enough evidence, certainly not the evidence we've seen, and the other choice which is to see the perpetuation of the use of plastic and more of that finding its way into our environment. From legal, if we were to, as a council, say the only bags that we're going to allow into the stream are compostable bags that adhere, for example, to the BPI standard, I think I've heard you say that that means that we have to go back and renegotiate the contract?
Mr. Chair, what's in front of the committee and ultimately in front of council is the entirety of a package. I think there are a number of questions that come out of the way that that's been framed in terms of, again, the package is right now the inclusion of plastic bags, compost in plastic bags, the inclusion of dog waste. So two things come out of that. One, the analysis that underpins the recommendation that's been reviewed by the Auditor General is founded on the inclusion of plastics in their entirety. Should the committee and council ultimately reject the recommendation as a package, that, in my view anyway, that is the end of it. This package has been approved by the Orgo World Board of Directors, and it is that package in its entirety that is being presented in front of committee and council. If in some future time following a review of the program, the council decides that it's going to restrict plastic bags to only compostable, and again, with whatever kind of operational challenges that might have with it, I don't think at that point you're going to be stuck with having to go back and renegotiate the contract. I think that can be implemented in the context of our ongoing dealings with Orgo World.
What would happen if council were to, in recommendation 2, remove the words plastic bags and? So if we were to remove the reference to plastics, so that recommendation 2 says, including the expansion of the green bin program to include dog waste. What does that mean in terms of the discussions that we'd have to have with Orgo World after that?
Again, given that it is being presented at a package, that it is a fundamental element of it, I would consider, and I suspect Orgo World would consider that to be essentially turning down the proposal that staff they're putting in front of the committee and council.
So our staff, because you were the ones negotiating this deal, how much of a stumbling block would it be to getting a deal done if we were to say, you know what, we want to modify this contract, but we're only going to ask you to take compostable bags?
So the $124 per ton is based on that service. But I can speak to, I can't speak to the operational, but pet waste is wrapped in plastic. So I don't know how that works.
Yeah, I think it would also undermine the business case, and in my mind, as Mr. White has stated, I think it would take us right back to day one of the negotiations. We'd have to go back through negotiations, which took up to almost the better part of a year, and then development of a very comprehensive business case for the Auditor General to review.
So take me through, and I know you gave one answer to Councillor McKenney, but can you bring me into even greater depth on our assumptions around why allowing plastic would boost the diversion rates, thereby making the business case?
A lot of that boost is actually by including the pet waste, the dog waste, into the program. So there's a significant tonnage of material that is currently going to the landfill that is probably much more appropriately going now to an organics processing facility. So that's where a lot of the boost comes from, just in that product alone. But then there's also increased uptake by homeowners who are perhaps on the ledge, or homeowners who only partially use the program, maybe they'll more fully use it. I mean, there is definitely, we see it in other municipalities where when it's more convenient for them to participate, they do participate more fully.
We have mixed messages in the city right now around compostable bags. A number of people are already taking advantage of compostable bags, and the guys on the crews, when they see them, seem to be happy to turn a blind eye to the fact that people are using those bags. With clearer messaging to say compostable bags are okay in our bins, and here's the logo that you need to look for, could we not achieve the same hit?
It's my understanding in municipalities that just use compostable bags, they end up with actually a lot of non-compostable bags in their system anyways. It's a really hard program to enforce and police. And so we have come up with this program that should be simple for the resident to use. It's accessible. They have the materials in their house that they can use. They don't have to purchase anything special. And it just will further encourage them to participate in the program.
It just sounds like a lot of intuitive kind of assumptions rather than being backed up by current up-to-date market research and probing what consumers' wishes and desires are. Okay. And I'm struggling as well with respect to the fact that we are proposing not to allow the compostable plastic products such as the pods and the cutlery, because we are worried, as it says in the motion, that it risks introducing contamination to the new waste stream, but we are okay with contamination of the waste with some level of plastics. Can you help me solve that conundrum? Why is it okay from one source but not another?
Chair, I think I'll be quite honest. Our staff's lens on this, and keep in mind that the Bill 151 has changed the landscape in Ontario. Municipalities across the province have bounded together, and they are negotiating currently with producers for inclusion of materials in blue and black box, and we're singing the same song sheet. There is no such process on the green bin side, and we heard from industry, and they admitted themselves, this is a bit of a barrier. There has to be a mechanism for products, single-use products that people are selling and profiting from, to come into our systems. Now, the province is taking care of it on the blue and black box side, and that's great. It would have been nice if they'd taken care of it on the green bin side, but in absence to that, municipalities are left to their own device. And I would suspect as the province goes down the road of producer responsibility on the blue and black box, more and more products are going to want to become compostable, which is a great solution. I think if you can create a compostable product, it's a great solution, but it shouldn't be a free pass into the green bin. And that's exactly what you heard industry say this morning.
And then finally, how do you react to the presentation by BPI? Because I've also heard that consumers, there's confusion around what standards are actually compostable, et cetera. What I heard from BPI was actually very clear and seems to be based on some rigorous science and methodologies. How do you react to what they told you this morning about the ability of using a BPI standard to easily identify to consumers what products they should be buying?
So in Ontario, there is no standard for biodegradable or compostable products, and that is something that has to be developed in this organics framework. So the province understands that there aren't any standards, and they are committed to working towards a standard. But in the absence of that standard, we're left.
But if, ASTM or ATSM, I mean, that is a North American standard. Why would we not adhere to that?
A lot of it is the definition between biodegradability and compostability, and in our high-speed processes that most municipalities use here in Ontario, those products may or may not be compostable or biodegradable in our systems.
Okay. All right. I'm not sure. I imagine that this will probably pass. It will pass council likely. But in the event that it does, what is, and I would prefer that it didn't, because I think we should be going back into them and talking about using compostable bags only. I'll be voting against this. But in the event that it does pass, what is the game plan to get us to some proactive measures that could eventually eliminate plastic out of the stream? Clear bags, using the various different bans on organics. What is our game plan to develop a solid waste strategy, other than just we're going to look at it next year?
That's our game plan. We'll be coming back to council in the next term of council with those exact types of strategies that you're referring to, early in the next term of council.
Like in the first quarter, second quarter?
Year one, how's that?
Okay, we're hearing frustration around the table that, it hasn't been dealt with in this term, and as we of us have to go to the doors over the course of this summer, and we want to be able to talk about what our strategy is to increase diversion, to get our waste stream, et cetera. So, all right, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Egley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry, I the question, so if I'm repeating something that somebody else has already asked, just let me know. So as I understand the proposed contract, there's nothing in the proposed contract that stops people from putting in compostable bags, correct?
That's correct, Chair.
So it's really a question of how we message what we want people to do. Whether we say we want you to use the bags you already have at home from your bread or your milk, or we want you to go out and buy compostable bags or what have you, correct?
And I think our messaging, as Chair, as I've said before, is we want people to use whatever it's going to take to get them in the green bin. So if it's a paper bag, if it's a plastic bag, if it's a compostable paper bag, compostable plastic bag, that's what we want them to use. We're just trying to make it as wide as possible and as easy as possible for them to participate.
Right, and I think one of the points you made was we have our education piece, and I'm wondering, because we do have an issue, admit it yourself, for lagging behind. We do have an issue in terms of getting people interested and excited about using the green bin. Have we considered reaching out to some of our community or corporate partners as part of the education process? We already have a robust arrangement with GLAD for cleaning the capital. We've heard from GLAD this morning that they have a product that not that we're in the business of selling somebody's product, but we already have an existing relationship with GLAD. We work with a lot of our large grocery chains in the city for other reasons and other projects. Have we considered some sort of leveraging those relationships to get the message out in a bigger and a broader way? And legal can chime in on this as well in case this is, proposing one business over another. But as I say, we have existing corporate partners. And is there a way we can leverage that and take your $200,000 and turn that into $500,000, if you will, in terms of the exposure and the messaging that we can get out there? And I don't care who answers it. We've got legal, corporate comms, we've got waste staff. But I mean, just have we thought outside the box in that regard?
Well, I can start. Mr. Chair, I don't think Committee and Council run into any significant difficulties with encouraging, corporate participation in city programs, or encouraging corporate participation with particular messaging. I think if you get into a situation where, as you say, recommending one product or one company over another, or mandating a particular manufacturer, that's when I think legal would want to have a better look at Section 106 of the Municipal Act to see whether you're into a bonusing type situation that, as you know, Council is not allowed to do.
Mr. Chair, the communications plan that will be developed will include a number of different tactics, from everything from traditional advertising, social media, as well as working with stakeholders to create champions of the program and to speak to how easy the program is to use. So that would be both community stakeholders as well as others. and we're open to any and all ideas on that regard.
Okay, thank you. I mean, Glad's still in the room, I think, so they're going to be providing bags for cleaning the Capitol, or those, and you can't answer this question, but I just put it out there. I mean, if the bags that were provided were the compostable bags, and people could feel them, touch them, see how they use, and see that it's not that odd, not that strange. So I just put that out there as a suggestion. Maybe we're too far along in this particular clean the Capitol, but I think for a lot of people it's sort of the fear of the unknown. What is this? How does it work? What's it going to cost? What can I put in it? What can I do with it? If people actually had an opportunity to use the product, gratis, if you will, then they may decide that they like the product. Anyway, that's just a suggestion. The other questions that I wanted to ask were about the poop pilot, so to speak. Can you tell us a little bit more about the when and the where and the how many? Is it going to be like what we've seen at Bruce Pitt, for example? Where are we on that?
We'll be coming back to council in the Q1 of 2019 with details of how we're going to pilot that program.
So at this point, there's nothing more to share other than you'll be coming back. If that's the answer, that's fine.
Yeah, so we'll have some details. We're just doing the research now as to what the different container types are and trucks and how we could potentially collect it, but I don't have any further details.
Because one of the things that struck me in the presentation is you talked about in-dog parks. And one of the biggest problems we have is dogs in parks where they shouldn't be that are leaving their deposits. So if I can make a suggestion or a direction, I think we should be looking. You can look at dog parks, but I think you should be looking at regular parks where dogs might happen to be, because, and speaking as a counselor, and I think probably most of the people around the table, the complaints we get aren't so much about the dog parks, but regular play parks, if you will, where people have let their dogs leave a deposit behind. So.
Yeah, I agree. We would like to look at a different, linear parks, multi-use parks, as well as dog parks.
Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you. At the moment, I just have two more speakers on the list. I was reminded by the chair of the Police Services Board that they need the room at 5 and need time to. I hate to curtail debate or even imply I'm curtailing debate, but I'm asking committee members that if your question has already been asked in 3 or 4 different ways, please consider not asking it in the 4th or 5th way. Councillor Shirley and then Brockington, I have.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay. Just a couple of questions that residents have written to me, and one is, can you explain why the City of Gatineau is able to have the program it has and we aren't, with basically the city doing the separation?
Are you alluding to their pay-as-you-throw program, or their green bin program?
Their recycling program overall and their green bin program.
So the province of Quebec has a provincial strategy, and so it's not just by the municipality, so it's much more driven from the top as opposed to the municipalities pushing up. Okay.
Secondly, relating to the pod cups, whatever the official word is for them, I was asked if there is any possibility of having a separate bag in which people put the pod cups so that you don't have the confusion and sorting issue. So if they have a bag full of things that are not compostable, you just throw it out, separate it out.
Councillor, are you referring to the plastic ones going into the blue box or the compostable ones going into the green bin?
Yeah, I'm referring to compostable ones going in the green bin, and then the issue that was raised pertaining to plastic ones being put in there when they're only supposed to be compostable. So that the reason we can't accept compostable is the infiltration of the plastic ones into that stream, right?
Well, I think there's a couple of reasons there. As I said previously, we weren't party to the tests that have been done, so the city would like to do that, and then try and work on the producer responsibility piece of including new products into the green bin, but certainly I think the councillor's hitting on a good point where a big part of the confusion lies on the labeling of the individual items. So potentially that would be one way to get across what's compostable and what's not compostable.
All right, well, I will then move on to the question of people continuing to use their backyard composters. Presumably there's going to be some messaging on that, although you don't want to fragment the whole message.
We have always encouraged people to continue to use their backyard composter. The at-home solution is always the best solution.
Yeah. Okay, and then, so I guess, do you want us, well, he doesn't. I will save my comments until later. Those are the questions I needed to ask, though.
Councillor, I'm only left on the list to ask a couple questions. If you have anything else, now's the time. Yep.
All right. Okay. So basically, I understand Councillor Leeper's hesitancy about allowing plastic into the green bin. But I remember back 7 to 10 years ago as we were discussing this, and there were a group of us trying to get compostable plastic bags or liners for the big bin to be allowed into the program. And we were told back then that no, showing any form of support for plastic or even fake plastic would promote the use of plastic generally through the community and all other forms of use. And secondly, we were promised that if we didn't permit plastics or compostable plastic into the green bin, that the green bin would still have incredible take-up, and the take-up would not be diminished by the fact that people couldn't use plastic. But in the period from the start of the program to now, I've seen two things happen. One of them is at home. My family have become very dedicated green bin users. My daughter did a video on how to make a green bin liner and had over 30,000 hits, so did pretty well. And they are completely, my whole family is completely dedicated to sticking to their homemade green bin liners, and that's what they're going to do no matter what we do here today. But I still have to say that no matter where I've gone in the past 7 years, no matter who I talk to about green bin, a statement always comes up that if you guys had just let us line the bin with something clean and like plastic, they would be in. But because you couldn't, or we didn't do that, they weren't participating. So some may say it's an excuse, but I've seen it come up unprompted too many times to think that it's not a reason. So I really believe, back then that it would be a reason that would keep people from participating, and it, I think, has proven itself to be a reason over the past 7 years, and certainly the numbers bear that out. So I remember former Nepean Mayor Ben Franklin once told me that in local government, the perfect is the enemy of the good. So in this case, it may be perfect to have no plastic in the green bins. But if the ultimate goal is participation, then whether or not we want plastic in the green bin, we have to see that plastic is the key to a big chunk of the population getting involved in this. And after that, my recommendation on messaging is simple bandwagon advertising. It worked with the blue box and the black box, telling everyone else is using these boxes, and that's usually all it takes to convince people to use it. My dad does not know why he uses the blue box and the black box every week, but he uses the blue box and black box every week because everybody else does. So I think if you remove the yuck factor and you give people or make people aware that everyone else on an incremental basis is using this, I think it's going to be very successful.
Thank you. That sounded like a good summing up statement, and we're almost at that point. Two more councillors with questions. Councillor Kekish.
Thank you, Chair. In terms of the timelines, and if we do approve this today, I think 2019 is when this would start. Can you clarify to me why, other than communicating that to residents, why we're waiting a year or 8-9 months to do it instead of doing it, let's say, later this year?
Chair, we're hoping to sign the contract with Orga World sometime in May. They take approximately 8 months to do their fit up. So they've got a source. They, understandably, they haven't even ordered anything at this point because they don't know if they have a deal. So they have to source the machinery, which isn't easy to source, and then they have to do their entire fit up, their air abatement system that they're putting in place. And it's also contingent on OECC, I shouldn't say approvals, because they do have approval to take the material now, but what they do have to do is go back to the MOECC with a plan to get that approved. So to be conservative, we said mid-2019 or 2019. Hopefully, optimistically, it happens before that, but that's the date we're giving today publicly.
Okay. On the coffee pods item, I know Councillor Chernyshenko's motion includes direction about that in the future, but why aren't we able to, if some of those coffee providers label their pods clearly that you are able to do that, why can't we do this as part of this package now?
Chair, a couple things. One, I think they've stated that they've done some tests that have been successful, but the city was not involved in those tests, and it is our program, so we'd like to be rest assured that what they say, they are fully compostable, that they are.
So we don't have, on the slide in one of the public delegations, it alluded to the fact that they did a program with Orga World and it was successful, I think, something along those lines. We don't have that information or that report.
Well, just to say that we weren't part of that testing, and I think because it is the city's green bin program, we'd like to be part of that testing. But the other bigger problem is, how do we solve the producer responsibility? Now, Toronto does have, and again, I've said this a couple times, in absence of provincial framework, Toronto has gone ahead and developed their own framework, and we're going to probably follow on Toronto's footsteps and come up with some similar framework. So it's a question of, is the material compostable? Does it actually break down in our system? And then, since they're putting their product into our system, what financial consideration should we be receiving for that?
Okay. In terms of the whole, I appreciate some of the comments and the delegations about the plastic and eliminating plastic, and we're introducing it now into the green bin program, and the irony of that. But obviously, diverting waste is, you're recommending do include plastic to increase the diversion rate. So I'm wondering if you can sort of explain to what your business case is in terms of recommending that versus what's the biggest downside including plastics and keeping plastics in this program versus increasing rates?
Chair, I'm not sure if I quite understand the question. What can we expect by putting dog waste and plastics in?
So you're telling us to include, you're advising us, recommending to include plastics in the program so we get our diversion rates up as opposed to trying some other things. So why is it a better thing to increase diversion and include plastic versus, try other things or wait for other things to happen than that? Why are you advising us to include plastics? What's the downside of including plastics into the program?
Chair, I think the biggest positive benefit of including a wide range of materials residents can put their organic waste in, including plastics, is that they have complete flexibility to participate in the program. By including a plastic bag that, as we've heard many times, they already probably have in their house, pretty much removes any other barrier. It removes the yuck barrier, it removes the maggots in the bin, it removes the fruit flies in the bin, and I think it makes it very easy to participate in the program. So with that in mind, I think that's where we're getting the uptake in the program.
Isn't there direction, and we've seen some cities already ban plastics. I think Montreal maybe has banned some sort of plastics in terms of selling them and that sort of thing. Isn't there provincial, are we hearing anything in the future that the province is going to be at some point banning plastics? And isn't that sort of, you know, I don't know when that's going to happen, if there's any talks from the Ministry of Environment about doing that, but how do we square that, just to sort of play devil's advocate in terms of what some of the public delegations raised?
Chair, I'll let legal chime in on whether we can legally ban plastics as a city, but I haven't heard.
I'm not suggesting that we do that, by the way. I'm just saying that some of the changes that are happening and things that may happen at other levels of government as well.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything coming out of the provincial government about banning plastics. What we have heard from the federal government is moving to more reusable and compostable plastic bags, which again, as I said, if they did that and regulated that, that would be perfect for our program, because people would have a cheap access to a compostable bag that they would be bringing home their groceries in and then using in their green bin.
So finally, in terms of the compost product, right now Orgaworld sells that to farmers, what it does?
Correct.
Okay, and so what would they be doing with this new material? We've heard a lot of people raise this, but what's the difference in terms of, are they still going to be able to use it, or how would it be consumed now when we're allowing plastic?
It'll be consumed in the same manner, or sold in the same manner to the same end products.
Okay, so there's absolutely no difference in terms of the end product and how it's going to be used.
That's
okay. 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 Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brockington.
Just on the issue of the communications plan, will the committee be able to review and approve the plan before it goes out? I think it's going to be fairly comprehensive, and I would really like to see this committee provide input and blessing before it goes out. So what's the plan in that regard?
Yes, Chair. Back the communication plan to the committee for the consideration.
My concern with, just very briefly, what staff raised about, and they were talking about a positive education campaign, promoting it, easy to use, all very good stuff, but we're changing this plan because of a group, a subset of the city. They don't want to hear about the positives of this program. They've already heard it. They know how to use the bin. So we have to, it's almost like shock. The advertising has to be, I think, a little more aggressive. I'm not going to do that today with you, but I think it's very important that we realize who we're targeting in that message and tailor the message to that specific group. And it can be done in many ways, but I think it has to be more than just a generic, sort of light and fluffy type of messaging. But if it comes back to this committee, I'd be pleased to see that. And that's it.
Thank you. Okay, I think we've had a lot of comments verging on debate, though most questions to this point. So, of course, I will have to allow for any councillors who want to offer last comments or debate, but I would say only if you need to. If we don't have anyone at the moment that wants to, we have the motion that I read out at the beginning to work with industry that produce various products, unless me to read that out again, or unless legally I need to read it out again, I would say on that motion, is that carried? Carried. Thank you. Okay, so I will sum up very briefly on what is a big issue and quite a wide-ranging discussion. I think the key message that this report is delivering in terms of the plastics and the bags, and we have to remember there was a whole lot more to this renegotiated contract than just that, although those seem to be the, bad puns come out, sticking point. You can use plastic. You don't have to use plastic, and we'd prefer you didn't, but you can. And for people for whom that makes a difference, and we have heard from plenty that it does, I think it's a big step forward. There's a temptation to hold out for the perfect green citizen, but we have to recognize that that doesn't really exist. That person doesn't really exist, and holding out for that perfect behavior will often keep us from moving to where we want to go, moving the yardsticks forward. So as a caution, this report is not trying to offer perfection. It's trying to offer steps forward in a number of different areas, better value for the taxpayer in a number of areas, and meeting a lot more people where they are as opposed to where we hoped they would be. And I'll put in the past tense too. There were the expectations, Councillor Shirley-Ray, that no, we won't allow for liners because people will participate or should participate without it. Well, we have the benefit of years of experience now, and I think we have to be able to move to where our citizens are sometimes and not always expect them to be that perfect green citizen. I'll tell a very short story from about a decade ago in Switzerland, where I had a friend who was a waste management consultant. And they felt that they'd plateaued in terms of residents driving to the neighborhood sorting depot, which is quite common in European cities and towns, where everyone gets out of their car and puts everything in the 27 different carefully labeled bins that you have to put them in. And they had a consultant do a report which indicated that if you allowed people to put them at the end of the driveway and someone to collect them, that the actual diversion rates would go up. But they went to a referendum. And the referendum said, no, people have to drive them to the depot. And he tried to explain this to me. In the Swiss mentality, you had to make it hard. You had to make people work for it. This was a bit of a Protestant work ethic, if you will, that you need to show your neighbors that you're green, that you're making the effort. We could hold out for that. So that failed in the end, and they had to settle for a lower diversion rate and people continuing to drive. That's not a perfect parallel to where we are today by any means, but I think it is a bit of a warning that this idea that to make people work for it and do more to qualify to be a good citizen, I don't think is good governance. What we're doing today is the opposite. It's saying we recognize there are obstacles. There are physical obstacles. There are people who don't have storage space. There are physical obstacles in terms of people's own ability to move things. There are stress and challenges in people's daily schedules that prevents them from being as good a sorter as they might want to be. There's transitory residents in the city, people who are not here for long enough to understand how it works in Ottawa and to do it right. There are those obstacles, and what we're trying to do today is to recognize that and remove some of those obstacles and improve participation in that way. So, in closing, as I've said, this isn't the report that solves everything, but it is a step forward. I encourage my colleagues here at committee to support this report, and I will, well, I don't think we need to call for yeas and nays. Do we, unless someone asks for it, on this report? Yeas and nays, there we are. Okay. Councillor Brockington? Is that a yes or a no? Councillor Brockington?
Yes.
Oui.
Councillor Leeper?
No.
Councillor McKinney?
No.
Councillor Mitt?
Yes.
Councillor Moffat's absent with a good excuse. Councillor Kakish?
Yes.
Councillor Taylor?
Yes.
Councillor Shirley?
Yes.
And myself, yes. 7 yeas and 2 nays. Thank you very much. You can't quite run away. We've got a couple of last things. I did not formally, I guess, get to receive the IPD item. So if that's received. We have no in-camera items. Any notices of motions? Seeing none. Inquiries? No. Other business? Motion to adjourn?
Carried.
Carried. Thank you. Yeah. Yes, yes.
Good job.
Thank you.